Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Center for the Study of Existential Risk. And today's talk that I'm really looking forward to. My name is Elena Kavanagh, and I'm a research affiliate at the Center and of the Study of Existential Risk, CSER. I'm very excited about introducing our speaker today, Dr. Myrle Ballard. Traveled a very long way from Canada, from Calgary, and she's Canada's research chair and associate professor in the Faculty of Science in the University of Calgary. Dr. Ballard was recently selected as lead author on IPCC Assessment Report 7. She's Anishinaabe scholar from Lake St. Martin First Nation, and she holds her doctorate in natural resources and environmental management. Dr. Ballard is trained in both Western science and Indigenous science, and she is a perfect person to bridge this gap and help us understand how to navigate the extreme events from an Indigenous science lens. So during this time of utmost geopolitical turbulence, the theme of this talk is on the screen: how do Indigenous people know events before they happen? So the floor is yours, Dr. Ballard. Welcome, our guest. Thank you.
Thank you for this afternoon for asking me to come and do this talk, and I'm really happy to be here. This is very coming here today is very prestigious. I've been telling people where I'm going, the University of Cambridge. Oh, okay. So here I am. So I'm going to do my introductions first in my own language. So that's what we do in Canada. Kinana kumene momano kumkau ikomiek ang nonje kasni kade ka Canada Canada kaki and Anishinaabe the Anishinaabe. So what I said was I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for asking me to be here. And I come from a place we call Canada, which means Canada, and that means sacred in my language. So I'm going to be talking about events because Indigenous people are in tune, and they're attuned with what's happening of their lands. First of all, I'm going to talk about who I am because we all come from mothers. And it's mothers who usually shape who we are. And my mom is 91 years old, and she's still very active. She still bakes bread, and that's her pride when she makes bread. And my mom was the one who taught me about the Indigenous science of things, Anishinaabe and Anishinaabe and all that. So my mother really shaped who I am because a lot of my peers are growing up in high school when they quit high school, but my mom never allowed me to drink. Sorry, I don't know where that came from. Never allowed me to quit high school, so I went from straight from high school to university, and it took me a little bit longer because I struggled being First Nation. I didn't have any support systems. So, but I graduated with BA, BSc, an MSc, and a PhD. So, and my mother really assisted me along the way, shaped me with where I am. And a lot of the work that I do, growing up, I didn't take it seriously. I didn't think it was knowledge because growing up was my mom really grounded me. At that time, I didn't know that it was ground knowledge that my mother was teaching me, but she taught me about the land, about the species, about the little birds and the way they sound. When they chirp a certain way, it's just what that means. When the leaves rustle, when they sound when they have a specific sound, and this is what that means, it's going to rain. Or the way the sun sets, a particular color. Oh, that's the way the weather is going to be the next week or so. The way the moon sits. All these were part of my growing up, but I dismissed my mom. I didn't think that what she taught me was useful. I didn't think it was valid. And it wasn't until I graduated with my my Bachelor of Science, and I went to do my graduate studies where you can do your own thinking, your own research. And that's when I realized, oh, what my mom showed me is really significant. And that's when I did a 360. When I went back to her to explain more. So the work that I do is Indigenous science, and Indigenous science is different from Indigenous knowledge, traditional knowledge. We talk about Indigenous knowledge systems, and these are the same when we talk about Western knowledge systems, because Western knowledge system is like a pot where everything is in there, like political science, social work, law. It's like a big pot, and that's the same with Indigenous knowledge. It's like a big pot with traditional childcare practices, traditional home building, stuff like that. So those are the knowledge systems, and then we start getting specific to Indigenous science. So Indigenous science is not an ancient science. Like when we speak of terms, it's very important to use the language in the correct context that we're trying to use. Indigenous science is about real-time events that are constantly changing. Indigenous people know what's happening on the land, and they're usually the first to identify what's happening on the land because they are the first responders. They're the first to identify something abnormal that's happening with species, with waters, etc., with climate. So the framework that I developed is a three-eyed seeing, but I'm not going to go into detail, but I'm just going to give you a snapshot to understand the work that I do regarding the topic Indigenous peoples and events when they understand events before they happen. So Indigenous science, like I said, it uses Anishinaabe laws. And these are Indigenous laws, but I use Anishinaabe because that's who I am. And Western science, and the third eye is the lens of our relations, which is really important. And this is the land, water, air, flora, fauna, everything that's besides human. So, and it includes both the animate and inanimate. So when I talk about our relations, it refers to the biodiversity that's out there, and it's relational. And that's a difference between Indigenous science and Western science. Indigenous science is relational because we include everything else as a part of our relations, and it's our responsibility to look after that. It includes winged, crawling, the two-legged, the four-legged, the finned, water, air, etc. And the celestial as well, because Indigenous people navigated the globe where before compasses became into existence. They navigated the oceans just by looking at the stars and using the sky as directions. And these are all pictures from where I come from in Canada. The top left hand one is in northern Manitoba towards Lake Winnipeg, northern part of Lake Winnipeg. And the left, right is near where I was raised. We call this area Big Rock. And these are deer from my region. Canada geese, this is from a pond near where I live. And the bottom one are rice fields, which we have a wild rice growing in Manitoba as well. So with Indigenous science, we have the laws and the natural law, language law, creation law. and a traditional law. And these are very important. Natural law refers to how the earth is, the natural laws of the earth, the natural laws of the ecosystem, the way nature designed rivers to be just to flow the natural way, ebb and flow, meander through, and lakes as well, the trees, the natural cycles of nature, the natural cycles of animals. This is the natural law. And the language law is really important with Indigenous science, Indigenous people, because from my language, I'm going to use my language, Anishinaabe. We have a lot of words that are descriptive of the ecosystem. For example, when I describe Canada, that in our language, Canada means the land of the sacred. Manitoba, where I come from, means Manitoba, means God sits. And there's a lot of places that are named by Indigenous peoples. For example, a community in northern Manitoba, it's called Pakatawagan, which means Pakitawagan, but that's anglicized, Pakatawagan, but it means where there's a plenty of fish. That's what that means. And why I say this, language law is really important, because when we started doing the monitoring of biodiversity, we go back to these words and we start to break them apart. We start to understand what the root meaning is. And for example, Pakatawagan, when it was named that way by the Indigenous people living in the area, there was plenty of fish at one time. But if you go there now, because of the water diversions, the dams that are built, Indigenous people are going to tell you there's not that many fish. The waters has changed. So these words are very important. They're an indicator of the biodiversity, and you can start using these words to monitor the biodiversity from the original naming to the present. And that's the work that I'm doing. And the creation law too is really important because that represents the life on Earth. This is an Anishinaabe word, okay, Earth, and the abundance of the earth and the balance and the harmony. And traditional laws are really important too, because in my language, we have words that represent how we're supposed to treat those things around us, the relationships we have of those things around us that cannot speak for themselves. And they have a voice, but we have to be the interpreters of those voices. And we have specific words that guide us. For example, in my language, we have Njine, which means, as I was growing up, my mother always told me, don't do that. Something will happen to you. Like there are repercussions of doing something, like it's going to get to you. So these are the teachings that we have. Patawa means along the same line, but it does not impact you, but it's gonna affect those around you. And the 7 teachings that we have, part of them are Pimaji, when the next 7 generations is part of that, and that this is part of a sustainability to look after what's here, so that the next 7 generations will always be looked after. And that's the teachings behind that. So when we examine Indigenous people, when they understand the way things happen, the events, when they understand, it's by the observation of what's around them. And the subtleties is very important because this is where the senses of us hearing, seeing, smelling, tasting, touch. These are very important to Indigenous peoples because this is how they decipher. This is how they decipher what's around them. For example, they can hear. They can hear what the birds are singing. I guess not saying what the birds are singing. They can decipher what that means in terms of predicting weather, or if there's danger, stuff like that. And they see as well. Smelling too is really important. And tasting probably. We have the ability to taste. We all have these. For example, tasting. When I was doing my work with water and flooding in Lakes Martin, tasting was really important because when I was talking with elders, they knew the taste of fish. Flooding, I never thought that the taste of fish would be affected by flooding, but the elders knew that fish taste different when it's flooded, when the land is flooded, because the contamination from the overland flood, it goes back into the water and it impacts the fish, the way the fish taste. They know the taste of moose, whether it's from the surrounding area or when it's from further north. They can taste the meat of moose, which we eat a lot, moose. But I can't taste the difference, but they can taste the difference. So these are part of the observing what's around you and touching with too. And I think one of the biggest difference between Indigenous and Western science, the differences are the use of the sixth and the seventh senses. Like a lot of Indigenous people, they have dreams because they were spiritually connected with the land. There's a lot of ceremony, there's a lot of prayer, so they get a lot of dreams. And it's with these ceremonies that they observe, they listen, and they communicate with what's going on. I don't know if you know about when they go into sweat lodges. Do you know about sweat lodges? Yeah. So what do they use in sweat lodges?
It's like sorry, my knowledge comes from Twin Peaks. They go with that meditation. Just kind of, experiencing.
Yeah, what do they use in there?
What do they use?
Yeah.
BOT.
Huh?
BOT.
They use what?
BOT.
Yeah, it's more than that. They build inside this lodge, they make a lodge, and inside the lodge they have a pit. It's not really a pit, just where they put rocks, hot rocks. And they burn those rocks, and then they become very hot, and then they start prayer. And the person leading it's usually the elder. That's when they start to get. They go in there for a specific purpose, and then they usually start getting vision, or they hear what they're supposed to do, and that's a difference. And these are very real. They're true. Like, yeah. And as well too, dreams are very important. My community, which I'm going to talk about, was we were evacuated in 2011. We were forced displaced, forced relocated, everything. And so I did a lot of research, plus I have videos. So one of the elders I talked to was saying that before the flood happened, he had a dream of what's happening underneath the ground table, what's happening with the water. So that dream came into fruition, what he dreamt about 5 or 7 years later. So there's a lot of this is what separates, I guess, maybe some non-Indigenous people. They and they have these, but this is what Indigenous people use when they talk about when they know about events before they happen. So a lot of the work I do, I work with Indigenous people. And these are First Nations people, mostly because in Canada we have First Nation, Métis, and the Inuit. We have 3 distinct groups that are recognized. And I'm a First Nation myself. I'm a part of the Indigenous group. So a lot of the work that I do is working with my First Nations and getting them to share with me what's happening on the land. Stories about the water, stories about species. And a lot of it is recognizing what names are for each of, I wish I had a pointer. Like, for example, these places. This is my community of Lakes and Martin. That one there on the right-hand side of the picture is called the Narrows. But if you go there now, you would never know that it used to be narrow. At one time, this was very narrow. It was very shallow. And the elders, and some of them are here, talk about when they used to walk their cattle across there. And if you see that now, you wouldn't be able to walk your cattle across because it has rapids as well, currents. So it's wide. The reason why it's like that is because they build an uplanch. They built a dam there upstream about probably 10 kilometers upstream. They built a dam, and it's an artificial dam. And they put the dam in operation in 1961. It was in operation, and since then, and the elders talk about stories of they knew the lands before the dam was built, and they have knowledge of the land, species that were there that are not there anymore. So there's loss of biodiversity because of the dam, and it's their knowledge, and they use a lot of language, and they speak in their language, and it's about the oral history, the oral tradition of the people. It's about the stories, because a lot of information is passed in just through conversation and sharing, and community driven. They're part of the research, listening. A lot of times they just listen. And this is where a lot of my research is based, working with the elders. So this is the one my community of Lakes and Martin. My community was the area where I'm from, in Manitoba, central Manitoba. If you look at North America, I like to call it the belly button of North America, because Lakes and Martin is right in the middle of North America. And the lake itself was caused by a meteor, and it filled with water. And the result of the meteor hitting was a hill. It was about 200 meters, I guess, above, but it sank. So this area here, where Big Rock, we call it, I have documented stories where the people used to pick blueberries there. They used to pick pails and pails and pails of blueberries, and they used to go camping there. That's how abundant the blueberries were. So, and then the legislation came into place where there's fire bans. No one was allowed to burn fires anymore. And Indigenous peoples, they used to manage the land by setting the land on fire, because that's a form of regeneration when new plant growth, etc. So this area didn't have any blueberries for the longest time, about 50, 60 years. So forest fire went through there, a natural one, about 10 years ago or so. And after that, there was a resurgence of blueberries. See, if you let the land take care of itself, everything will be natural abundance. So we have blueberries there now, but probably after a while they'll stop again because there's not going to be fire to regenerate the land. And we have wild rice growing in my community, my province. And ever since I was a little girl, I used to go pick wild rice. And I always used to complain there were no child labor laws back then, but that was how I was raised. So now I appreciate it because I got to learn, I got to experience the land. So this is a traditional activity, and you take sticks about this thick, and they're about this long, and the picker will be in the back, and the paddler in the front. So the picker grabs the rice, and it hits into the canoe. So a lot of it will go overboard, but that's a part of sustainability because you don't want to pick all the rice. So there's going to be enough for next year for it to grow back. So that's part of the process of sustainability and being sustainable. So I'm going to be talking about a case study on Lake Martin, but I'm not going to go into detail. For those of you familiar with Canada, the central part of Canada is the prairies, and that's where the Lake Winnipeg watershed is. And it comes from the Rockies, and it flows westward. No, it flows eastward. So my community is where the arrow is, Lake Martin. I don't know if you can see it. And the Indigenous name we have for my community is Obashkuteyang, which means land of the prairie where the bison roam. And I'm going to be making a little bit of reference. I'm not going to go into detail this, but just to give you an overview. So when we talk about our relations that are the indicators, they're the predictors of weather types and birds, etc., nests, migration patterns. We did a workshop with elders in 2023, and we compiled what they told us, and some of these are the key findings from what they mean, because traditional practices can be altered by climate change. For example, snow and ice conditions disrupt the timing and extent of the seal harvesting. I don't think I can go into detail to each one, but just to give you an overview. And they gave us examples of what happens when the ecosystem shifts. They made reference to the species, birds, salamanders appearing in cool regions, etc., where they're normally in warm region, but they appear in colder region. And wildlife too, fish, moose, when their habitat is what happens when their habitat is impacted, pollution, climate change related activities, waterways, weather patterns, shorter cool spells, intense storms, changing ice road. This is really important because a lot of northern Canada still uses a lot of ice roads because we don't have roads going into regions in northern Canada. We rely on ice roads, and a lot of it is flying, and they use air. So when climate change shifts, it means shorter winters, warmer winters, so they can't use they can't use the roads anymore. And this also impacts the way of life as well for both people and the species. Challenges to adaptation, the health and well-being, reduce the land-based activities. Indigenous people do a lot of activities on the land when there's shorter seasons. If there's not enough cold weather, the snow won't, the water won't freeze. There won't be any ice, so their activities are limited. Plus, as well, too, when there's not enough cold temperatures, there can be an artificial, there can be a false layer of snow cover or else ice cover, and it's going to be water underneath. So a lot of the traditional land users will go above the snow thinking it's packed, and then they're going to fall into the water, and a lot of it destroys their equipment when that happens. So this is when events happen. Indigenous people observe these events, like, for example, when the chickadees, the presence or absence, their presence or absence in the morning can be used to indicate weather. And if you want to compare the Western science side of the barometric and the temperatures, are the relationship between these observations. But I'm just going to be talking about the Indigenous part. I'm not going to go into the Western. Loons, for example, they're an indicator of weather patterns. Their behavior, the vocalization are indicators of wind or bad weather. Do you know the sound of a loon? No? It has a very unique sound. It's and I don't want to try my bird calling, but it's a very unique sound. I challenge you to look up the way they sound. It's a really nice sound. Spruce grouse are another indicator. When a spruce grouse or ptarmigan, if it's found, because we eat that too, and if it's found that it has it's got a full stomach, with that means bad weather. We'll go into the buffalo. The buffalo, if it has a thick hide and hair, that means it's going to be cold weather. Plants, if there's an abundance of dogberries or tree berries, they can be used as a predictor of snowfall for upcoming winter season. Plant orientation is really important because that's another way Indigenous people would tell directions. In the tundra, in northern Manitoba, a lot there's trees, but there's not that many. But the trees that are present there, one half of them are bare, which means the wind blowing from the north strips the ones facing the north, and they usually face south, and that's an indicator too of a direction. Plants, they're an indicator when they're going to be picked. Yeah, they're an indicator of when they're going to be picked, and the size of them or the way they look, the frost, the insects, the two play a big role in the way weather is predicted. Loons again, the size of them, they're an indicator of weather that's going to happen. Sundogs, we all know sundogs. No, I guess you wouldn't see them in this part of the world. But when we get extreme cold, you can see the sundogs around the sun, and they're an indicator of the weather at the temperature. They're really cool, actually. It's like a rainbow, but it's really cold. That's when they show, when it's really cold. Boat, wake, a candle, the way it burns, blows, a wood stove. And these are all related to the tools that I used in Western science. So there's a relationship between them because the Western science is always trying to validate Indigenous science. So if you want to validate, there's the tools you could use. Lake Winnipeg is in central Canada. It's divided between the North Basin and the South Basin. And Indigenous people know the lake really well because they do their traditional activities, they do their cultural activities. And right now, what's happening around Lake Winnipeg is that the Southern Basin is extremely polluted. It's very high in algae. So Indigenous people know that they use the body to think of the lake. And they call this section, the narrowest part, the kidney of the lake. And that's where the filtering process takes place. And it's the same where our bodies, where the filtering process takes place of the waste going out, etc. So if the kidneys are damaged in the human body, we're going to suffer the impact. And that's the same way with the lake. If the kidneys of the lake are damaged, it's gonna the waters are going to suffer the impacts. And that's the way. And that's the way it is. They built a causeway here on they built a causeway there to connect mainland to a provincial park there. Running out of time. So this is Lake Winnipeg algae, and when there's high algae, it kills the fish, and because of the warmer water levels. This is my community when there's really low water levels. We had to use another truck to pull out a truck that was pulling a boat that was stuck. So those are the impacts of manipulated water levels. Obaskodeang, where I said that means the prairie. My mom wanted me to take a picture of her. My mom never gets me to take pictures. And this was before the flood happened. It must have been something, a premonition that she had. She wanted me to take a picture of her beautiful yard. She always had flowers. And the flood happened in 2011. They called it the super flood of the century. And my community was first displaced, the first relocated. This is our traditional lands, and we don't live there anymore. We were physically relocated to another piece of land. The elders know when something is happening with the land. This is around the area where there's a flood. The elders know that the roots are decaying from underneath because of the ground table is coming up. So it's decaying the trees, and these are tree stands that are intermittent throughout the area, the whole area, and the elders know that the ground table water is rising from under. The research that I do involves a lot of testing soil, working with the elders. So this is from my research. I'm just going to go through these really fast. We dig holes and examine the soil content. And this is where I say that Obaskodeang means land of the prairie, but it's not a prairie, it's just filled with trees. But you can determine that it was named land of the prairie when you start digging and examining the roots of the trees. They're very thin, which is an indicator that it's a very young forest. So Western Science, we use a lot of water sampling, etc. And they're trying to build another channel in the area. This is where I grew up at the upper left. That's my mom's house. That's where the flowers were in that. And this is a 2011 at the height of the flood where they forced relocated us. And then this is 2018. If you went there now, you will never tell it was once a community. Everything's gone. All life is gone. So a lot of the people I work with, they tell me what's happening on the land, what's going to happen. They are the voices of the land. And I do workshops with the people, and then we go on the land, back and forth, back and forth. And that's the one I showed you. This is in October in the lake. We got stuck there. It was right in the middle of the lake. I think I have to wrap up now.
Thank you so much, Professor Ballard. And it's amazing to hear about the voices of the land. And you've given more than enough examples of why Indigenous people so often know things before they happen. And we would like now just to get a round of questions. I collect all the questions around the audience and try to answer them. SJ, please.
Or just so the people online can hear.
No worries. Thank you so much. I really appreciated that, and I really honor your coming here and sharing all of this knowledge with us. You know, I'm very aware that places like Cambridge are institutions that create knowledge, but they have also been institutions that have been complicit and active in the destruction of knowledge, and so much of the knowledge that your people have held on to, despite the pressures and the genocides that you faced, is really. I'm so grateful that it is still there. I want to ask a question about using knowledge, which I know is a sensitive topic, because very often people from sort of more colonial mindsets want to extract the knowledge and take it and just plug it into whatever we do, which is not what I'm interested in. But your elders must have ways of putting knowledge to use for the good of the community. I was just wondering if you have any wisdom about how they have done that and how they might be able to do that better, and what kind of support could be given to allow this amazing knowledge that Indigenous communities have built up to be used for their own benefit and for ours. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll speak from Canada. I started the Indigenous Science Division in the Government of Canada in the Environment and Climate Change Canada branch in 2022, where I started the first Indigenous Science Division, where the idea was to start using Indigenous science and Western science together for a better decision making by the government. And that said, you saw pictures of my community that was evacuated and forced displaced, forced relocated. During the process of that, my community was without homeland for about 7 years. My community was all over the province, different areas. We didn't have land. And then when the government, province decided they're going to relocate us, they didn't ask us where we wanted to go, where we wanted land. They unilaterally made the decision where we would go, despite us having workshop meeting after meeting saying this is what we want, this is where we want to go. They didn't listen to us. When they built the dam, they never consulted with us. They never asked us. They still don't ask us on a lot of things, despite Canada, we talk Canada, you think that it's different, but it's not. The waters that I showed you, the province does not ask the Indigenous people, the people living downstream, we're not part of the decision making, even though we show them evidence of what happens when you do this, but it just goes in one ear and not the other. But that's not to say that certain parts of the country uses the Indigenous knowledge. Another example is when they built the school. When they built the school in the old community, where the people, the residents, the community members said, "No, don't build the school there because that's a snake pit. That's where." But no, they didn't listen. They built the school on top of a snake pit. And as a result, in springtime, during winter, you'd see snakes coming out of their pits. They'd be inside the school, coming out of vents because they didn't listen to the people. So they don't. But I think it's changing. I shouldn't say it's all negative, but I think it's slowly changing.
Thank you very much. And will we just collect the remaining questions from the audience, and then we'll move on to the online questions?
Thank you. This has been very, very interesting. I wanted to ask, and I think you've answered this slightly in the most recent question, but with Mark Carney's government withdrawing from a lot of sustainability commitments, is that having an effect on how you see your collaboration going forward? Or is it kind of a continuation of the existing paradigm? And also, have you witnessed or been engaging with any kind of cross-border or international knowledge sharing, dissemination of other Indigenous groups, like whether within North America or worldwide, either to deal with the lack of government engagement or to kind of bolster the strength of this kind of Indigenous science across borders?
The use of Indigenous science across the border, like across the US or the international?
Internationally, if you're, yeah.
I think Canada is setting an example because of their new Indigenous Science Division within the government of Canada. But across the borders too, a lot of people, decision makers, still don't use or respect Indigenous science, especially, for example, the waters, the international waters. They don't respect Indigenous science. So it's, but I think it's slowly changing because we have the international conventions like the CBD, Convention on Biological Diversity, one IPCC, the Migratory Birds Convention. I think they're slowly changing. I know that the CBD is really active with Indigenous peoples, doing interventions regarding Indigenous knowledge, Indigenous science. So it's slowly changing at the international level, plus a lot of the meetings that are happening at the international level regarding policies. They include Indigenous science, but they don't call it, wording is really important. They like to call it still traditional knowledge or traditional environmental knowledge, but its meanings are slightly different definitions.
Thank you very much. And I really appreciate the emphasis on the Indigenous science as against Indigenous knowledge. And this is very important. Is there any last question from the audience? Or will we move on to the online?
So this is a question from Renzo Tadai. They said they met you in Paris last December at the IPCC meeting. Their question is about the 3I seeing approach. How does this approach deal with the fact that Indigenous knowledge and science can see things Western science cannot see?
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't want to go into detail because because I'm going to be talking more about it later. But 3H seeing is very is a good way of looking at things because it gives a voice to our relations who may not normally have a voice or their voice is overlooked. And it's a chance, it gives them an opportunity for us to hear what they're saying. For example, the lake, what is the water telling us when it was spewing the mud in the middle of the lake like that, where it should have been deeper? What is the water saying? What are the bears telling us when they move from the north into warmer regions? And without asking them, the conservation officers, I use a helicopter, tranquilize them, and they take them back to the north. What are they trying to tell us? We have to listen to them. Maybe they're warning us about something, but that's what the 3H seeing is, giving our relations a voice and listening to what they have to say.
Thank you so much. And it's a great note to finish this talk on the point that let's listen to the land and let's not forget who are the stewards of those lands. Thank you very much, Professor Ballard, and let's keep it around.